votes out of 590, with most of the other votes being voided. So that's the noise you hear from the background. So I'm not going to be able to stay online right now because we're right in the middle of this Congress. So I want to thank everyone and welcome my brother, Mr. Ayokunle Fagbemi is my brother. I'm very, very close to the family. I'm happy that he agreed to talk to us today. I'm sure it's going to be a truly, truly outstanding discussion. And I'd like to hand over to Pastor Sonny and also Jumoke to take it from there. Ayokunle, thank you very much for joining us and being here. I will come back to you hopefully before we finish the program. All right then, bye-bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Pastor Sonny. While we are waiting for Pastor Sonny and Auntie Jumoke, can you please read the profile of our guests today? Good evening once again. You are all welcome to Africa Leadership Group and Nigerian Leadership Series. Sorry, today is a special day, and that's why our president is not on set now. He just spoke about what is involved in, and we are waiting for our first vice president, Pastor Sonny Enebi.
I'm here.
Please, can you read the profile of the speaker? Do you have it?
Did you send it to me?
Sorry,
No,
we can't hear you, sir.
You didn't send it to Olu. Well, it's okay. Sorry everyone. Good afternoon. I welcome everybody to this program. Elder Ayokunle Fagbemi, you are welcome. It's a pleasure to have you this evening on this program. My name is Sonny Enebi. I will be co-hosting along with Olu Victor and Jumoke Akintaylor. We're discussing another very, very, very important issue today in Nigeria. If there's anything that's more important than this matter, I really don't know what it is. The Nigerian situation, security challenges, and whatever solutions that we may be looking at. And today to talk about this very, very important issue is Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi, who is a political scientist, a national security and defense management scholar. He's obviously gathered enough experience in these ratings, and we want to actually know what is the problem. When we are doing the Jonathan election in 2015, a lot of people thought that Buhari, being an ex-general, and he hammered on that security, that he was going to deal with security. We actually believed that with him coming up, security issues will be taken care of. But alas, this is where we are today. And it now looks like it's something that is getting bigger than us. But we have Dr. Elder Ayokunle Fagbemi to speak to us about this issue today. What can we actually do to get security right in this country? Is it so difficult to fix security? Why so? And what are the inherent underlying challenges in the Nigeria security situation that has defiled 3 presidents now so far, and all the efforts of the governors so far, because it seems as if we will make one step forward. I find the early days of this regime, people were saying, oh, security situation has improved. But no sooner did they say that the situation has gone back. So the first question, why we welcome you, I don't know whether you've spoken about yourself. We just want to start with, why is the security situation in this country defying all solutions that have been profiled yesterday? Is it that they are applying the wrong solutions, or they have not properly diagnosed what's the security situation in Nigeria? You're welcome, sir. Over to you.
One of the reasons why I usually run away from self-introduction, and I prefer to be called a student, has to do with the fact that we are having what some of us refer to now in this sector as mixed multitude. And unfortunately, this does not allow us an opportunity, as it were, to fully and consciously interrogate what we are dealing with. You've asked the question, which is a straightforward question.
Yeah.
Why are we here today? Why are we to answer these questions objectively without emotions? One of the few things that will come out openly is that we are where we are today, partly because we are dealing with an issue that concerns each and every one of us. Unfortunately, however, individuals, corporate entities, and governments define the concept of security based on their informed risk assessment and the implications therefrom to themselves or to those jurisdictions that they hold there. And these usually come with multiplier effects. The negativity of mixed multitude in discussing security issues in Nigeria revolves around the improper adoption of concepts, the problematics of confusing these issues in such a way and manner that often leads to misrepresentation and or deliberate skewing of the matter in such a way that some of us are beginning to think it is deliberate. And you can now say some of these have to do with strategic distraction, strategic desensitization as part and parcel in terms of our governance system, wherein it is state capture by an elite that is interested in perpetuating totalitarian tiptoeing, since they themselves are agents of and are committed to full-blown kakistocracy. Painfully, many do not understand what kakistocracy is all about. Kakistocracy is simply speaking about a people that ordinarily you wouldn't have wanted them in public offices, but they end up there. And they have learned how to perpetuate themselves in office. So for my presentation today and our engagement, I'm hoping that I will approach our conversation more essentially from a statecraft orientation and style in terms of methodology, so that we can discuss the current national security environment, provide us with a summary of the security challenges, and take a look at the theoretical perspectives on peace and security, particularly in terms of that phrase that has now become very common, the peace and security architecture of the Nigerian state, and the rationale for the dysfunctionality that we're experiencing in our security and law enforcement services, and why we have the series of failures. I will hopefully speak to the issue of policing triad as envisaged by the dynamics provided for in our legal and policy framework, starting from the Constitution, and then talk about the recommended solutions and way forward. I hope I've been able to give you the nugget that you were interested in having, sir.
All right, thank you very much for that piece. I guess what we'll just try to do is, did you say you have a presentation, sir?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, all right, so after this video, we'll take that short presentation, and maybe after that, we can then engage you based on the basis of the presentation that you are making. Our backroom people have a video to play to show some of the security challenges, and so they're going to play it now. Let's watch. We may also speak to some of the issues.
Mr. President, Senator Bola Tinubu, it is to you tonight. Mr. President, Senator Bola Tinubu, it is to you tonight that I bring the burden and plight of our people too. I trust this message finds you in good health and high spirits as you continue to navigate the intricate responsibilities that come with the esteemed position you hold. It is with a heavy heart and deep concern that I pass this message on the current state of our beloved nation, Nigeria. In a time when the heartbeat of our nation is racing with fear and the very fabric of our society is tearing at the seams, we stand at the crossroads. President Tinubu, the nation calls for your undivided attention as you embark on a private visit to France. Our beloved Nigeria is grappling with unprecedented challenges that demand urgent and decisive action. Kidnapping and abductions are the order of the day. From Lagos to Kaduna, Taraba, and violent and criminal activities have pervaded our land. Even in the heart of our nation's capital, the audacity of kidnappers has become a sinister reality, striking fear into the hearts of our people. Our citizens are living in constant fear, unsure of their safety and the safety of their loved ones. This is not the Nigeria we dream of, not the renewed hope that was promised. We applaud the gallantry of our security operatives, but indeed more work still needs to be done to keep the people safe. Efforts are being made, but it appears they are not far enough. What has become the strategies of state policing and community policing has been talked about several years, and the huge white papers and advisory notes on how to tackle insecurity in Nigeria, where are they? President Tinubu, as a pro-democracy agitator, isn't it the right time to restructure Nigeria for it to work properly? Is the Nigeria you and your friends fought for, is it the Nigeria that you're talking about? The removal of subsidies has unleashed a tidal wave of economic downturn, leaving families struggling to make ends meet. Prices of commodities have gone through the roof. The biting effects are felt across the nation, and the loss of confidence in the government is palpable. This is not a time for complacency. It is a time for bold, unwavering leadership. Mr. President, I think it is about time to get the nation's eggheads in one room and find a lasting cure to our ailing economy. As you stand on foreign soil, Mr. President, remember the weight of your responsibility to the Nigerian people. Our citizens, including those who voted for you, are losing faith in the government. The implications of the loss of confidence are far-reaching. And as a leader, you cannot afford to look away. Investors are fleeing the nation like never before. Economic potential of Nigeria is being squandered, and the consequences will be felt for generations. We urge you, Mr. President, to take immediate measures to create an environment that attracts and retains investment. The clock is ticking, and our economic future is at stake. Mr. President, the time to act is now. Swift and decisive measures are needed to curb the escalating insecurity, alleviate the economic burden on citizens, and restore the confidence in the government. This is not only a call to fulfill campaign promises, but a plea for the preservation of our great nation. Mr. President, our regional leadership is hanging in the balance. Some members of ECOWAS are signaling exit, and Nigeria's influence is under threat. It is time to reassert your leadership, strengthen diplomatic ties, and secure our place in the Committee of Nations. As journalists, we will not shy away from probing, inspiring, and holding leaders accountable. President Tinubu, live up to the expectations of your calling and the mandate upon which your office stands. The Nigerian people deserve more. They deserve a leader who acts with urgency, integrity, and unwavering commitment to the well-being of our great nation. The challenges may be daunting, but if you are resolute and carry the people along, we can all together overcome. The giant of Africa must now rise and take his rightful place in the Committee of Nations and harness his potential for the Nigerian people to smile again. God bless this Federal Republic of Nigeria. And this is my final word tonight. Good night, everyone.
That's the end of the video.
Thank you, Olu. So, sir, you will take your short presentation. I'm sure a lot of the participants have questions, but take it in conjunction with what Shehu Okinbaloye of Channel just said right now with regards to kidnapping, bandits, terrorists, militants, and all manner of insecurity. So while you do your presentation, take the whole thing together. And after that, we would then engage.
I am happy that Sheu's background for us actually is helping me to have a good start. What exactly are the trends and the environment in which we operate? Sheu sought to address President Bola. The trends we are dealing with is very simple and straightforward, and where in the real sense of it, our security environment has more to do with crimes, criminalities, and illegalities that are ongoing in our country, primarily because of societal poverty, unemployment, ethnicism, religious contestations, poor border control, transborder crimes and criminality, domestic terrorism, and international terror networking. These are issues that often are just jumbled together and mumbled together to say we have insecurity. Meanwhile, we're dealing with crimes and criminalities provided for by our laws. Unfortunately, there's another issue that is pervading the system and shaping the environment, and that is neo-eugenics. The neo-eugenics is aimed at achieving self-destruction of Black Africans on the continent in such a way and manner that they will never fulfill and meet up with their potentials. And dovetailing into that is a neo-Islamic dynamics that has to do with accentuating the inherent religious cleavages for political gains and calibration of Nigeria's alignment towards global political Islam. Number two has to do with the inefficient government interventions that are taking place either at the state, local governments, or the national level. And these are often primarily because people have lost faith in the mechanisms that we are dealing with because of corrupt and vested interests that are often laced with primordial sentiments. And then the nature and character of our partisan politics and our skewed development that is not balanced, and the loss of communal values and national identity systems. Number three, in terms of security law enforcement and defense management related factors, we have overlapping mandates and failures, which contribute to the inability of the agencies to appreciate the principles of complementarity and supplementarity in engagement. And then you have the nip in the bud. And if you do not nip in the bud because there is lack of synergy, and then you have the dynamics of the environmental climate change and the unnecessary incursion of role of politics and politicians in fueling this insecurity. Now, what are the issues? Number 4, fueling and sustaining insecurity in Nigeria. There are intra-civic space contestations that we do not really know how to manage, and we've got to start working on how to engage ourselves for peaceful coexistence. And the nature and character of our partisan politics are quite interesting. And I'm happy that Pastor Itwa is in Benin in Edo State, and we can see the kind of data that have been coming from there in the last 72 hours. The inconsistencies in government information management system and the policies and services delivery are another thing that we have to contend with when you want to discuss security. So when you start talking about kidnapping, rape, theft, robberies, one chance, those are symptomatic manifestation of this series of failures, of these challenges that I've been mentioning. And then you now have issues that are becoming crystallized in terms of criminal trespass and forced dispossession of land, and then the negative impacts of macroeconomic dynamics, especially the outfall of the Emefiele cash confiscation exercise. Finally, in terms of practices within institutions, you have challenges associated with procurement practices, problematic manpower disposition, and ghost personnel syndrome. And that is why you keep on hearing this phrase that you cannot have less than 400,000 strong Nigerian police force. How do you want them to police Nigeria? Meanwhile, the legal provisions that we have is not leaving policing in the hands of the Nigerian police force alone, which is one of the few things that we need to work on. And that was why I said I normally try not to introduce myself, because number of us out there are always mismatching and misrepresenting some of these terms, terminologies, and we confuse it. And then you have the inadequate welfare provisions and protections, and then the dysfunctional information management system. So if you want me to now say what exactly is the summary of the challenges, the summary is simple. Poor labeling and definition of what constitutes security challenges. And like I said earlier on, these appear to be a deliberate thing, because you do not want to apprehend people and you do not want to use the correct legal phrases through which you can now apprehend and then prosecute and deter others from doing some of these things. There is nothing known in our legal and policy frameworks as farmer-herders clash. What we call farmer-herders clash, when you take a look at all the issues that have occurred, and let me use the incident of Bokos that occurred December 24 as a case study. Close to 200 souls were lost. That automatically in itself says to us that if 200 persons died, you need to ask questions, how did they die? That means you are dealing with extrajudicial killing, you are dealing with issues of murder, you are dealing with what ordinarily should fall under the auspices and ambit of homicidal investigation. But unfortunately, the people were buried before even the police team actually visited the place. So you are not doing anything like that. And then properties were burnt. That is arson. But the moment you say it was a farmer-herders clash or community clash, you do not go into the details. And that is why poor labeling and definition of what constitutes this security challenges is a major issue. And this is happening because there is a poor comprehension of security-related legal and policy frameworks. And there is a deliberate, conscious effort to ensure that these legal and policy frameworks are not strictly adhered to, they are not properly presented, and they are not in a way to the extent that even though public officers say they have sworn an oath of allegiance or oath of office, they seek to circumvent this. And this is where it gets a little bit disturbing. And then you have what is called the deliberate non-enforcement of legal and policy frameworks. I've mentioned the fact that rather than have a situation where we will apprehend or prosecute culprits, the dysfunctional administration of criminal justice in Nigeria allows people to go without being brought to book. Because if people died in Bokos as a case study, how did they die? They died from injuries. Which kind of injuries? Was it a machete cut? Was it by bullets? Was it by the use of cudgels? And you need to understand how these will dovetail into what is usually called the forensic investigation. And you will agree with me, and lawyers on the platform today will bear me witness. I will want to be provided with a case law of any law report so that I can start correcting myself, where firearms were utilized, and during the course of prosecution and the litigations throughout the court system, if they ever mentioned the markings on the firearms that were utilized. I'm looking for that case law. I will want to have the case law based on law reports. They are not existing because deliberately some people do not want something like that, because the moment you are able to identify the bullets and you are able to quickly say this was the particular firearm type, you must say this. You can now dovetail back. And that is why it is quite instructive that we are very grateful to God that the lawyer, the female lawyer that was killed with her pregnancy in Lagos, Christmas Day, about 2 or 3 years ago now, the case has come to a conclusion and they were able to do some few things. But even in that particular one, the markings and the references on the firearms that were available were not recorded. What are we dealing with? We are dealing with the problematics of security-related information management systems that are intra-security agencies related in terms of their information sharing, in terms of their responses activation and deployment, and security systems data gathering and information sharing, even through platforms and channels. We equally have that which has to do with the weak or absence of proactive responses planning, deployment and feedback mechanisms on efforts that are aimed at effective policing, crime prevention, deterrence, apprehension, and prosecution. And like they always want to say, the baba of them all is corrupt and vested interest, where everything gets summarized under the simple issue of procurement and wanting us to think that the only way out is to throw money at it. And when you throw money at it, you begin to realize that the money doesn't get to solve the problems. And this is why some of us are insisting that we must go back to our constitutional and legal provisions, and we must take a look at connecting the research, theory, legal, and policy frameworks continuum in such a way that it will help us to properly achieve this and bring about the activation and compliance with the provisions of the law. A good example and where to start is to start from the presidency itself and the executive branch. When you take a look at the 1999 Constitution, you have the Constitution providing to deal with security and defense management issues, the National Security Council, the National Defense Council, the Nigerian Police Council. Painfully, these councils do not meet as and when they ought to be meeting. And when they do meet, they do not meet or are designated as proper council meetings. And that is why you always have them report that the president is meeting with service chiefs. There is nothing known to law like president meeting with service chiefs. What we know is that a council meeting on security or defense or police council should meet and is meeting. And that is why for 8 full years, a certain professor of law, a certain senior advocate of Nigeria who occupied the office of vice president, we can count on our fingertips in those 8 years how many of such meetings that had to do with Security Council, Defense Council, and Police Council that he participated in. And that is why when we want to discuss the management and the mismanagement thereto of the NSAS protest, this same public officer, vice president, discussed police council matters in National Economic Council. Whereas, yes, he is the vice chairman of Police Council, and he is the chairman of the Economic Council, and members of Economic Council governors are equally members of the Police Council, but they were not supposed to discuss police matter during Economic Council meetings. And that is why the legal counsel of the Nigerian Police Force actually went to court and actually achieved a milestone on saying it was an illegality to constitute those panels of inquiry until a political solution and the matter was withdrawn. So what we are dealing with is a situation where deliberately the laws of the Nigerian state are not being implemented, they are not properly defined, and they are not properly articulated and executed. And this is where the security challenges are occurring. So if you're asking for the way out, the first place to go to is to say we want to ensure that all of us are on the same page, that these legal and policy frameworks are known by every stakeholder and is available in public domain and people implement it as it were. For example, today we are now discussing the dynamics of whether we should have policing or not. I can tell you within the ambit of the existing legal and policy framework of the Nigerian state that recognizes the fact that policing is supposed to be a triad, you will see provisions that stream through either the Police Act 2020, which is the subsisting legal framework, or the Constitution. It allows you to have all the elements of policing triad in place, and that all agencies playing one functional role or the other must work together in sync. And that is why you will discover that when you're talking about policing, is a different thing from police force. Policing is the real thing that we need to do. Police force is that entity responsible partly for policing and to provide leadership and harmonization and harnessing of all these resources. For example, the Nigerian Police Force is designated to issue license and permits for carrying firearms. It should interest you to note that the National Park Service, within the ambits of their mandates as provided for by the Act, establishing the service, they too are equally expected to give a secondary permit for anyone who wants to carry his authorized firearm and go into the bush. So you cannot even own a firearm and go into the bush, into the forest, without first going to the National Park Service and the Agro Ranger system to collect another license. So we have a number of all these things, and I'm hoping that this has given us an opportunity to understand that we need to discuss the multi-tiered policing in perspective, but the most important thing are the legal and policy frameworks. I know you want to come in now. I thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very instructive because you've spoken very well. You've tried to dimension what the challenges are, either from the economic situation, poor labeling and definition of what constitutes security challenges in the country, looking at the legal and policy framework. You also looked at the issues foiling and sustaining insecurity in Nigeria. You spoke about some of the inconsistencies in government information management system as it relates to this security. And it's good to have proper context so that when we want to deal with it, we know exactly what we are dealing with. But I would like to ask, these issues, I mean, one thing we see in Nigeria is, because you said one of the way out is putting the legal and policy framework in place. We have laws in Nigeria, we have things that we have made, but the people saddled with implementing these laws simply do not follow. And a lot of people have often said leadership calls for concise, concrete action, either to act as a deterrent or as a motivation for people to do what they need to do. We had a president in this country who said he gave a marching order to an IG and he did not know the IG didn't go. What happened? Nothing. Things happen and there are no consequences. So do you think that the lack of consequences, especially from the leadership, because anyway, let me not provide solution, you know, these things keep repeating themselves and nobody, you mentioned the Plateau case. Over 200 people were killed. There was no inquiry of what the police or the army did or didn't do. Are these not some of the things that have repeatedly foiled these things to keep going on? Because if there are consequences, for example, for failures, won't we get more traction in the fight against security?
Thank you. I guess you answered yourself and gave us some more food for thought. I'm glad that you referenced the case of the misconduct of a serving Inspector General who, by virtue of what he did, properly defined, acted in an insubordinate manner to his commanding officer and appointing authority, the commander-in-chief. The books are very
Okay, we can't hear you anymore. Maybe
he's frozen.
Maybe he's frozen.
Let me try to call him on the phone, on his cell phone.
Okay, try and call him and let's see.
And while we're waiting for him to rejoin, Colonel Fadile also is a security expert. He's actually the one that introduced us to Elder Fagbemi. So maybe he can chime in a few comments while we're
Okay.
waiting for Elder to rejoin.
So you want
Colonel
to
Fadile.
you want to unmute him? Yeah.
Okay. Let me see.
I see Pastor Funke Awolowo, but we'll take you when maybe it's a question, so he can take that question.
Yeah. Colonel, I've asked you to unmute. Okay, here you are.
I'm trying to do that. Yeah, thank you very much, Jumoke. I think Fagbemi has covered a lot of ground. Like I said, whatever I'm saying from my own record or knowledge or what I taught the military officer, the people I taught in Command and Staff College are all Major Generals and retired. So the current ones, I don't know what they were taught. Because the issue we are facing is actually an internal security operation issues. It has to do with internal security operation issues that have laid down rules and procedures. You can see, or I can read from papers, that virtually all states have military men in one form or the other. That is wrong. That's not their job. That is not their responsibility. When you shift responsibility, you shift success. The military are the last resort when law and order has broken down. And in most states where they are, law and order has not broken down. So why are they there? How can you do that in internal security operations? Now, again, you want to talk about the religious extremism, which I call criminalism or bandits or kidnapping. These are crimes. They are crimes that is all over the world. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. In Houston, where every day, every 10 o'clock news, 2 or 3 people are killed in Houston. So the same thing in all other parts of United States of America. There is distinction between criminality and security. All we need to do is strengthen our internal security operations methodology, period. Who are in charge? The military is not in charge. The military only comes in at the last resort. Are the police strong enough? No. Are they getting enough intelligence from SSS? No. Are we getting enough information from other paramilitary organizations to help the police track and get those people involved? No. And then, if I may say, statistically, we don't know what is going on. How many people can calculate, say, in Lagos, these are the number of people living there? Or even the police, ask them, how many are they? Their numbers, they cannot say it. You cannot verify it. The same thing with the other paramilitary agencies, the SSS, they're supposed to be actually the ones feeding the police with information and intelligence, actionable intelligence, don't forget, that they can use to track and get it. People kidnapped, they get money, they use phone. Nothing is happening. But if I send money to my account, it doesn't work, they send me SMS immediately. That did you want this check cleared? What is wrong? Something is wrong in that area. So those are criminality that the methodology needs to change. And then, before Kunle continues, we do not have the manpower. 200 million, they say we are. How many are armed? How many are there to provide our security? How many are there willing of our leaders? The obligation under the Constitution, security and welfare of the people are the primary purpose of government, federal, state, and local. How many is holding them responsible? Nobody is holding them responsible. The big men are building houses instead of factories to block the market for criminality. Get them engaged. Look at our land. If you travel from Lagos to Kaduna, Kano, or go from Port Harcourt up to Maiduguri, the lands are there, ready for agriculture. You don't need fertilizer. How many are we? How many of the governments, both state, local, and federal, are engaging the youth in doing all these things? I was in Arugungu prison for 3 years. The people, the prisoners, are engaged by the local for a small amount of money to cultivate sugarcane that they export. beans in Birnin Kebbi. The prisoners are engaged to cultivate those things and export. What do? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Maybe Fagbemi should continue from here. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've spoken very, very well. I mean,
very much, Colonel.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Fagbemi.
I'm very grateful. Yes, I'm very grateful for your input, Dr. Fadile. Incidentally, you've covered a lot of ground, and I really must appreciate you, sir, for doing a good job, as it were. I don't need to underscore the dynamics that has to do with the issue of using the military for internal security operations. That is a misnomer, and it's simply because we are not following the books the way we ought to follow the books. You've rightly alluded to what I had said earlier, and that has to do with the need to call crimes their proper names and for us to apply the proper methodology to deal with such. I am hoping that ultimately we will, as part of the output and outcome of this meeting, begin to encourage the incumbent administration to do that which is the needful and the correct thing. When you take a look at what is happening now in Nigeria, today alone, there were 2 security summits that I'm aware are holding today that or are held today. There is one organized by the Union of Journalists here in Abuja, and by next week, there will be another one in Ife. The reality is this, and Dr. Fadile, you bear me out. There are too many summit and conferences, workshop reports that have recommendations and they have not been implemented. I am hoping that going forward, we will get President Tinubu to convene a study group whose responsibility under the guidance of the National Security Advisor will be to take a look at all the recommendations of all these reports and prepare a detailed implementation action plan, which we will. Hello?
Go on, sir. Sorry about that.
Hello?
Please go ahead, sir. Sorry for the interference.
Yeah, so that we will now know what we are dealing with and we can advise ourselves properly. The subject called state policing, it is nothing other than with multi-tiered policing system and the decentralization of that which we have as a current framework. When you look at the multidisciplinary, multi-sector policing system that we have, the Police Act itself allows you to have the railway police. You are supposed to have the aviation police. Are they doing their job? Are we leveraging on the other services and service providers the way we ought to? You have the National Security and Defense Corps, Civil Defense Corps. They are supposed to be leveraged upon, and we need to start ensuring that all these things are done and call a spade a spade. When you take a look at the national security strategy, it talks about all these things, but there is a weakness in that national security strategy. It does not reference and annotate with the legal and policy frameworks. When you say this is banditry, what constitutes banditry as per law? What constitutes terrorism as per law? Dr. Fadile, you've done a very good job in helping us to capture that the policing of financial crimes starts with the bank itself. The bank is supposed to report every lodgement and movement that is above a particular threshold. Do they report? And when they report, the next entity that is supposed to look at the pattern, Financial Intelligence Unit, do they do their bit? If they do their bit, do they do the necessary reporting? And if they do the necessary reporting, who are the analysts? I'll give you, don't let us even move out of police alone, police force as it is. You are supposed to have what is called pocket diaries carried by each police officer. In the last 3 decades, I have not been seeing policemen carry pocket diaries. When you go to the station, we are supposed to have what is called a station diary, where every police officer goes to meet the station desk officer and report, and they make entries based on what was contained in a serving police officer's pocket diary for the day. And you are supposed to have an officer whose primary responsibility, and it is provided for in the Police Act 2020, whose primary responsibility is supposed to come around and extract the synopsis and analyze it from the station and send it to the what is called the area command or the divisional. If it was from an alert post, it goes to the divisional police station. From the divisional police station, it goes to the area command. From the area command, it goes to the state command. From the state command, it goes to the zonal command. And at all the levels, based on the content of those reports, something is supposed to be activated. I will never forget the day I discovered as a young lad, 1976, February 13th, to be specific, the day the coup occurred in Lagos that took the life of General Murtala Mohammed in Bodija, Ibadan, was when I discovered that the man who we used to call Uncle Elijah, who was gardener, whose job was to, as it were, cut the grass on our streets, was a CID. Because on the street we had a justice. My father, with the kind of role he was playing in government then, that was a man that was cutting grass, as it were, on our street. On that day, the man, we used to see him carry his funny looking bag where he has all his grass cutting tools, that occasionally he will carry biro and make entries. On that day was when we discovered that he came to talk to my father and went to talk to the judge. Sir, there has been a coup, blah, blah, blah. And that was the day we discovered it was CID. What has happened to we operating the proper internal security mechanisms? Yes, they will want to claim that we do not have the manpower size, but it is so easy to utilize when you look at the triad. We are supposed to have private and institutional security arrangements in our homes and in our offices that we are to interface with as per the law. Section 2 of the Police Act talks about the need to interface. We are not doing all that. That is why the first place to go is to ensure that all of us are familiar with the provisions of these legal and policy frameworks, and we utilize them appropriately, and then call the spade a spade and do the investigation that will lead to the deterrence, because you would have apprehended 1 or 2 persons. You do not move money without it being alerted in the system. And then when you want to talk about the issue of their procurement, currently now everybody is shouting, oh, we need to use drones, to use technology. Who are the people that are going to help you to analyze the geospatial data that you are going to be collecting? Do you have the skilled manpower? Do you have the wherewithal, as it were, to actually invest in those things. So I plead with us that we should stop all this highfalutin stuff and first come down to the basic level. And my own take and submission, dovetailing from what Dr. Fadili has already put on the table, is for us to ensure that let us take a look at all those reports. Put a ban on summits, conferences, workshops, until we can implement at least 75% of the contents of all those reports. While you were in office, sir, there were things that you started that subsequent administration stopped. We cannot continue with such inconsistencies. We cannot. We must stop all this and begin to think in a preventive manner, in manners that will help us to ensure. If we start, like take for instance, everybody is now talking about AI. We have not even started dealing with normal petty theft. We are now talking of AI. So those are issues, and these things are provided for in the law. When you look at some of the things you put in place, sir, before you left office, all the cyber security protocols, all the anti-terrorism, the violent extremism stuff that they have made a nonsense of, that you are now having a situation where you are picking people from being ordinary criminals today. You have not really dealt with their criminal past, and you are now saying you are giving them amnesty, and not just give them amnesty. Some of the times you are now asking them to be employed and recruited in some of the sensitive services. Those things must stop, because the procedures and the mandate and the things that are in the books, the book says you cannot be recruited to come and serve if you have a criminal past. And that is why what is called vetting is done. So if we are going to make any progress, we must follow the books. I am hoping that from the presidency itself, they will start following the books by obeying the Constitution. There is nothing called president meeting with service chiefs. It is called Security Council meeting, Defense Council meeting, and the membership of those councils for the meeting to be co-ed are clearly spelled out. They must attend. They cannot just come to meeting without coming with council memo. If they have been coming with council memo, they would have come with enough materials over a period of time, and they would have shown clearly that most of the summit reports, the contents would have been put on the table for implementation, and you would have had key performance indicators that they will follow and implement. I'll give you a good example. I have with me the 2021 summit report that was organized by the House of Representatives under the speakership of Femi Gbajabiamila, who is the incumbent chief of staff to the president. It will be a misnomer and a discredit and disservice to his tenure as chief of staff if he could not leverage on the reports that was produced under his watch as Speaker of House of Representatives. If only he went to that office of Chief of Staff and he was saying to everybody that cared to listen, we must implement the content of this summit report, we will not be where we are today.
Thank you very much for your passion. I see that there is one hand up, but Pastor Ichwa is, I don't know whether he's online, whether he want to take a few questions, if he's able to speak where he is. Pastor, are you able to speak? You know, you said so much. We can actually use a bit of deterrence. Pastor, are you there? I say to people, you know, when crime occurs, people often say this phrase, and I don't know if you've heard that police, if they want to do their job, they can get the criminals and they can get to the bottom of it. And I often ask the people, I say, are they witch doctors? How would they find, are they wizards or magicians? You know, because when we watch crime fighting and co from abroad, they show us systematically. In fact, by the time they hold the criminal, he can't even argue because they will have followed a step and a process, and they get you, they get you. In Nigeria, they say, oh, no, don't worry, when police want to do their job, they can actually do it. Is it that we can't implement some of these technologies? Drones inclusive. I've often spoken about CCTV. CCTVs are low-hanging fruits. I don't know what you think. There are some low-hanging fruit security things that can be put in place across board, because it's one thing for the crime to happen. Then the next thing is to try to find the perpetrators of those crimes and prosecute them. Oftentimes, we don't see them being able to locate that, being able to locate these people successfully.
Oga VP1, I have a question, if I can add to what you just said. You know, intelligence report, the global community shares intelligence with other countries. And sometimes when I'm in Nigeria, I do get like a text, or even before you travel, if they know you're traveling to Nigeria, you'll get advisory warning, and they will talk about areas for you to avoid because of criminal activities. And this information being shared with the Nigerian government, if we have trade relationship and we're calling for international or economic summit, isn't this information that also comes to the Nigerian government ahead of time? And I remember an article that Ambassador Campbell wrote, July, I think 2021. I was sharing this with someone. Everything that is happening around food security, he wrote about 3 years ago. What is happening today? So if someone, if a citizen of another country has information about or predictions about what's going to happen in Nigeria, why isn't that information being utilized to prevent some of these critical issues that we have? So that would be my question.
All right, thank you. You take that, and then we'll take, Jumoke, you go ahead with the Q&A with the hands that are up.
Okay. So it is
no, let him answer that. Let him.
No, I was not sure if he was back in because I don't see him.
Oh, he left?
You can unmute, sir.
Okay.
Pastor Louis, is he back in? Is he in? I don't.
He's in. Is you on mute?
Yes, basically, the issue you have raised there are three issues that have been put on the table. The first one has to do with the use of CCTV and all these technology-based facilities. When you want to have effective and efficient policing, whatever you are deploying must be integrated and made to connect, as it were, to all manner of levels and tiers associated. It is unfortunate that we are having the kind of dispensation that we are having in Nigeria. Have we attempted? But unfortunately, the excitement, like I noted earlier on, was done primarily with what is called procurement with vested interest. Procurement with vested interest will never deliver a good product for you. The challenges associated with what was deployed then. But if we are going to go forward, what we are trying to achieve now in Abuja is what will have to happen, and that has to do with one, we must encourage individuals to have CCTV deployed in their properties. If we have CCTV deployed in private and commercial properties, then we are making some progress, and then this will lead to the next level. And the next level that we are dealing with has to do with what is called data gathering for security purposes. If you want to gather data for security purpose, You can only do such if and when you understand that most of the data that will be converted by statutory bodies into intelligence are actually in open source and are public domain. And if they are public domain open source, then it is clear that we must be mindful of the fact that it is not only official entities that have access to the data. And we need it. I'll give you a good example. You just mentioned about travels. Nigeria is the only country where the data that are available to international sources are more than what we have locally. When we were giving licenses for telecommunication, we gave to entities whose countries of origin were extraneous to our own. And so all our biometric data and communication data are warehoused at the headquarters, as it were, of those companies. 2, when you are traveling, you travel by carriers, aviation carriers that are non-national carriers to us. They collect what is called advanced passenger information because of what is called APIs. It means that your biometric data, your passport number, and your visa details are known to the home countries of those aviation service providers. So when you are saying that they have more data than we have, it has to be so. And then unfortunately, you have a number of development partners now coming into the country, support for NGOs, civil society organizations, and the like, for them to gather data, as it were. You think that they are using it for other purposes, but they have it being done. And recently, there's a publication that made the rounds. An individual that used to work with the CIA, she published, as it were, her own memoirs and reported in it how she used NGOs to collect data in countries of deployment. And this enough, and incidentally, one of our own geopolitical spaces in Nigeria happens to fall under one of those territories that she mentioned. I am hoping that going forward, we will begin to have a rethink in terms of our internal security deployment. We will begin to understand that when we are talking of integrated database management, it is something that has to be done and done properly. And that is why we need to understand that all this rivalry of agency rivalry and tough protection that is ongoing amongst the services that are supposed to provide internal security measure, we must put to an end. We must begin to act based on our legal and policy frameworks. Another thing that is becoming very clear that we have not attended to, that we need to start attending to seriously, has more to do with, one, the issues of ensuring that we do not allow primordial sentiments to take hold of our conversations on issues. We do not allow the nature and character of our partisan politics to infiltrate into security matters. We need to understand that you cannot begin to use the military for internal security operations when you already have a number of chain of entities that are supposed to provide internal security operation modalities and methods and systems in place. We need to see the reason where, for example, the officers in charge of authorizing and issuing licenses for people to carry firearms will know that the National Park Service has the right and authority to issue a secondary permit to that one which was originally issued by the police force. Because when you are given the firearm license, you are not expected to go into the bush with it. If you are found in the bush with a firearm and you do not have permits to go into the bush with your firearm, it's another crime on its own, and such persons ought to be brought to book. So it is not going to be a child's play if we are going to move forward. And this is why we are saying it is time for us to take a pause. It is time for us to ask, how do we translate most of the contents and recommendations of previous exercises of summits into detailed implementation action plans with key performance indicators? How do we ensure that we enable entities that are already in existence to play the roles they are supposed to play? For example, today, buses, trailers move with food items. Meanwhile, we have quarantine agri services who are supposed to be at the motor parks and are supposed to be informed by the service transport logistics service provider that this vehicle is about to move from Kano to Sokoto and tons of maize, X number of tons of this or that, and they will give the person driving a permit, so that if they stop the vehicle on the road or the person gets to the other points where he's supposed to dislodge, the thing must be properly handled and documented that he has traveled from Kano to Sokoto, and when he got to Sokoto, he went to the designated place. This is not rocket science. These are things that we ought to be doing. And that is why some of us normally will say, I can solve Nigeria's policing problem in 42 days. 42 days is 6 weeks. That is 1 month plus 2 weeks. We will solve this thing. And while we're going to solve it, we are going to solve it by following the books to the letter. I told you earlier on that data is already available. It is what you are doing with the data. It is how you are dispassionately and objectively handling this data without recourse. I have just told you, pick the 2021 summit report that was hosted by the House of Representatives and implement it to the letter, and you will discover that you can have a turnaround within weeks.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Pastor Sonny, do you want us to take the questions now? Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, go ahead and take the questions now.
Okay.
Except Pastor Itwa has something to say.
Pastor will come up later.
Okay, all right.
So we have 3 hands up, and I just want to add my question to it. So you talked about all these conferences, but do we have like strategic plans for the next 1 year, for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of how we're going to address this security issue? Is there like a global plan? Is there a Nigerian global plan for how these issues are going to be addressed? So if you can just add that to the questions. I'm going to take Pastor Funke. Please go ahead, man, unmute yourself and ask your question. Pastor Funke?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to tackle the question concerning the Yemi Osinbajo aspect, that was mentioned, that the vice president during Buhari's time. I know that concerning powers, of security, defense, and all that, the vice president, from what I hear, has practically no powers, and even if he's sitting and presiding over meetings, he's doing it as instructed. So, based on that, because NSAS was mentioned, I thought really basically he really could not express what he thinks as a person, being a lawyer and all that. Maybe he can interpret, but he didn't have that full power. And then I'll go on to, somebody just, as Dr. just spoke, that we're really backward when it comes to this security thing. I remember as a law student, in one of my law studies, over 20 years ago, in fact, 30 years ago, we were studying about MI5 and all their clandestine activity and all that. And after they did the job fully, they were able to uncover a certain Indian man. They had to go all the way to the European Court of Justice because even concerning bugging places and all that, there are laws surrounding it. I don't think we're halfway there because we're talking data at this point, and I wonder what those meetings, because he just mentioned that there have been 2 meetings regarding security. By now, there should be a policy, there should be a mechanism, there should be a plan. And it's like there's no willpower. The willingness is not there. And when it comes to really combating these problems, there's so much, I would call the word evasive. It's like there's a lot of compromise surrounding these security matters. And that's where we are. I remember during President Jonathan's time, I think it was said that, was it American intelligence or Israeli or a combination of both? They came to Nigeria and they were able to do a lot of successful plans. Only for them, by the time they were ready to do the real job, they found out that everything that they discussed with the government was out there. And so they were hugely compromised. They went back immediately. And so, why is there no willingness? Where is there so much compromise? And even in today's government, as we see, they're talking about President Tinubu, what he's able to do and what he desires to do. And with Shettima as vice president, there's a huge question mark. And let us not be deceived. There's a great deal of compromise out there, and the willingness to tackle the security problems is not real. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have Professor Grange, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Jumoke. I want first to thank Elder Fagbemi for that very, very informative presentation. I find it very informative because you have linked the issue of security to practically every other problems that we are going through in Nigeria today. So I believe that we need to stress that aspect for the politicians and the leaders to realize that, security is not just security by itself, but it's actually, it's actually going to affect our entire lives. Having said that, you also mentioned the fact that a certain, I think it was by Gbajabiamila, who was member of the Senate or I don't know. But anyway, he came up with a very good paper on how to tackle security. Realizing that we have three arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature and the judiciary. At that time, he was actually playing the expected role for the legislature. But as soon as he left there, he forgot that because he went into the executive space. And for him, that was a much more maybe lucrative area. So the legislature, my question is, what is the role of the legislature here? It's not just to make the laws. We've got all the laws there, but to have an oversight over how the law is being implemented. So there, there is a problem, and we cannot contain that problem by just setting up other committees without realizing that the legislature must play its role as the oversight. And finally, the global space. How are we reporting our issue of insecurity to the global, to the global institutions? We are supposed to report under the Sustainable Development Goals, but we don't know what is being reported there under justice, peace, justice, and strong institutions, which is the SDG 16. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. If you could just address those issues.
Thank you very much. So, sir, do you want to take those 3 comments because we have a couple of hands up, or should we take all of them? Elder, okay. So, is Pastor Louis Elder Fagbemi still on?
He just left now. Let me call him again.
Is
Okay.
Fadile, is Colonel Fadile retired around? Maybe he can help.
Yeah, he's still on. He's still on. So maybe
He can put in a job to the questions they've asked or commented made.
Colonel, sir, do you have anything to chime in with all the comments that were placed so far? Okay, okay. Colonel is back. I mean, the Elder is back in. So I think Pastor Lou, if you can make him co-host, so he can unmute himself.
He can unmute himself.
Thank you very much. I have the following to respond to. Do we have a global strategic plan on security for Nigeria? I am not a public officer, so I am not in a position to respond to that. What I do know as a consummate reader and student is that we have substantial materials in place that if ordinarily we were implementing their contents, we will not be where we are today. And a number of the exercises that we are now throwing out and saying a meeting held, and this was the outcome of that meeting of the president with the governors, and that they are considering this. Ordinarily, we should not be having that. We should be having a systematized implementation plan. And this is where another crisis of identity and crisis of service providers in governance comes to play. We need to have more people that are good students and practitioners of statecraft so that they can guide us through all this. The second issue had to do with the query that was issued to me on the referencing of the certain vice whose name was mentioned by the pastor that sought to ask the question. If you've observed, when it becomes the individual
You may want to, I think you should stop your video, sir, so that we can hear you clearly. That may give you more bandwidth. Okay. Okay. Go ahead and unmute yourself, sir. I see you on the, okay.
Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
I was talking about having you ensuring that you have a copy of the Constitution and you go through the contents of the Constitution, particularly the third schedule, part 1, talking about federal executive bodies. In terms of the federal executive bodies, you have the National Defense Council. 16B says the vice president, who shall be the deputy chairman. So it is not a beer parlor talk. It is expected that by provisions of the Constitution and the oath of office that was taken, the oath that was taken in terms of what they are supposed to do, they were going to operate the Constitution faithfully. K, which is on National Security Council of that same third schedule, says in 25B, the vice president, who shall be the deputy chairman, and then went ahead to list the other members of the council, to include Chief of Defense Staff, the Minister of Government of the Federation in charge of internal affairs, that is Interior now, Minister of the Government of the Federation in charge of Defense, Minister in charge of Foreign Affairs, the Security Advisor, Inspector General of Police, and such other persons as the President may in his discretion appoint. This tells you that the council is not about the whims and caprices of an incumbent. It has to do with the provisions and letter and the spirit of the Constitution. And per adventure, you want me to descend into the political fray, I will. One of the reasons why citizen Muhammadu Buhari, as a presidential aspirant, either on the CPC or the APC, insisted that the vice that he must have must be someone who has a legal background. And that was why, as CPC presidential candidate, he had citizen barrister Tunde Bakari, a legal practitioner, and he ended up with Yemi Osinbajo, a professor, a senior advocate. Now, we need to be clear that some of the implementation of legal and policy frameworks is not about persons. It is about you fulfilling the content and the spirit. And this brings me to Prof's own submission. The legislative responsibilities, it is usually interesting to note that whereas they are too quick at jumping at saying we want to amend the laws, they do not see the reason why, first and foremost, they must first implement the existing law and optimally implement the law in such a way and manner that will allow us to have effectiveness and efficiency. The Police Act came into force 2020. It is now 3 years old. And I can tell you that the contents of the Police Act, less than 10% of it is being implemented. Less than 10%. I've given you an allusion to what happens in terms of pocket diary, station diary, and the analysis and reporting, and feedback for proactive response planning and deployment that ought to take place, that are not going on. So it is not just about we saying these things and then we get excited because some people come to brand or brandish or grandstand on some issues. We have gotten to the level where we need to ensure that each and every one of us are very familiar with the provisions of the law, so that when you are talking about oversight, I'll give you a good example. How many times under the space of 7-8 months have we gotten the National Assembly requests that the service chiefs will come and brief them? In the real sense of it, they are not supposed to be invited for briefings like that. They are supposed to participate in the appropriate committee meetings of the various chambers of the two chambers of the National Assembly. And if need be, you will have a joint session. And usually what is supposed to be is that you should have a liaison officer between the service and the legislature. We do not have those things because it is easier to just do the photo finish of asking them to come around, as it were, to say, oh, we are doing something. And what are they doing? They are doing what some of us call harmonic vibration. Harmonic vibration is moving on the same spot and achieving nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an echo where you are. Can you please mute one of your devices? Can we please have Mr. Olale Samuel ask your question while we are waiting for Auntie Jumoke? Mr. Olale Samuel, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Can you hear me now, sir?
We can hear you. Please ask your question.
I don't have a question, but I just have a contribution on the state of insecurity and how to address it.
Please go ahead and share it.
Thank you very much, sir. Addressing the insecurity situation in our country today requires ideological revolution. And it equally requires reviving the social, political, and economic situation put in place by our forefathers. I want to say that in those days, our fathers, they put in place, there is that Commonwealth way of life and living. That is Commonwealth way of life and living, a generous way of life and living. Caring, giving, hospitality, sharing and daring for one another were part of the energies of our fathers. Our fathers in those days, they don't believe that whatever they have belongs to them exclusively. They gave and shared to others. But what happened today? Everybody keeps to himself whatever he or she has, regardless of what is happening to neighbors. And that is why we have an issue of insecurity. I will tell you, it's like somebody that is having about 100 million or billion of naira, instead of creating employment or business opportunities for others, he will keep that money to himself. Others will tell you that that money you have is either you have stolen it, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to every one of us. And they will begin to chase that person. And that has been the issue. So we need an ideological revolution for us to be able to deal with the issue we have now. Again, our father placed a structure that we have deviated with. We have deviated from it. You see, they said landmarks Landmarks are not easily forgotten. Landmarks are not easily erased or removed. The moment you remove it, it's going to affect. The military deviated from the settings of our fathers. The regional system of the regional system of government and regional police. In those days, when each region controls the wealth of the nation in their domain, there was consistent economic growth and rapid industrial development. So every region, industries upon industries, and so there was employment and business opportunities. Nobody cares for what, but today, because everything is concentrated at the center, it's affecting everybody. It has brought poverty, unemployment, and so this, we need ideological revolution. Ideological revolution will offer a captivating journey into the depths of our socio-political crisis in our country. We need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and take Juliet and then Dominic. Juliet, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Jumoke. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, the guest, and good evening, the President LG and the staff and the team. Sorry. Now, my question is, I remembered vividly. Can you hear me? I remembered vividly the promises President Tinubu made during his campaign. The promises he made, how to make life better for the people, how to make life better for people and create jobs. And then jobs like he laid emphasis on agriculture, security, lives to secure the lives of people. But now what we are seeing is things are getting worse. People are carrying placards, people are hungry. Naira is becoming nothing. Please, what is going on? I don't even understand. Which way is Nigeria going? What is our government doing? Are they not seeing? Not hearing the cry of the masses? They made promises upon promises and yet nothing is done. What can they do? Who is talking? Who can they hear? Who can talk to them, let them listen and help the poor masses? It's bad, honestly. It is.
Thank you. Yeah, would have Dominic. Dominic, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm going to be quick because I'm on an assignment here. What I want to say is that let's look at it this way. Majority of us are in the diaspora. When you carry a basket to the river, if the basket is leaking, you find a place to patch it. I'm speaking from the background of forensic because I'm a forensic. So what do we do first? We are here. We are equally a catalyst to this money that is being siphoned from Nigeria. Who are the people who are catalyst to them directly? The drivers in offshore, Nigerians drivers in offshore. We are the facilitators. If people bring money, they don't know these white people. They go through me and you to say, this is how we're going to lodge it. That is what we first of all block within ourselves. That's one. Another catalyst to it is that the host country that is hosting us, there's something we can do. If I say today, because we know those who are having big money inside the treasury of the Westerners, we have in Germany, UK, or the Western world, America and other. We say today, we write a letter and say, all Nigeria professional, or those who are sweeping the streets or another, we're not going to do anything today. We're going to shut the place down. I tell you, we are shutting it down because our money that has been weeded down to this offshore, we want to see this money be repatriated. We can dialogue with them. We say, okay, we know those who have 50 billion pounds sterling here while we are suffering at home. If that money is sitting down there, we want you to bring this money out. Let's share it 50-50. We take 50 back to Nigeria. First of all, that's the way we're going to do it. If we don't do it that way, forget about it. You use human being in making human being. We have the number, we have the capacity in doing that. But the problem we have is, if I call today, because I'm based in London, let's go to Trafalgar Square. You see one doctor will pass the other side, say, no, not me, not this and that. Personally, I cherish Nigeria. I know who I cherish in Nigeria. If it's only air that is not contaminated, that I'm breathing at the back of my yard during Christmas period, that is enough for me in Nigeria. So again, another thing we need to do is to go straight to the school, universities, which I keep doing on my own accord, and preach to these people who owns these children. The children belong to the big men who are in Nigeria. When you start speaking, you turn it, SWOT analysis, turn their mind against their parents who have told us that. Let them know that the money they are bringing, my children that in Western world, we eat from it in the next 10 to 20 years. When I'm saying that, I'm not inferring directly it's going to be my children. It could be your children. They will get to marry each other either in the school or in the public places. This money is going to mix with we who are in exile. So when we begin to put this across to them, they will be afraid to see how they are going to bring the money. If you compare and contrast with the Indians have done the same way. The Pakistanis have done the same way. But this money is being returned back to their home country. Summarily, I will dive down to who are the people we need to look into their affairs. After, let me concentrate my mind on Muhammad Buhari regime. Who is Issa Patami when we're talking of issue of security? I'm not saying something that I cannot defend. Rather, I'm saying something that America as a country have already fingered these people. And we are keeping quiet. This person came into offshore and asked us to be paying money to banks, £60, $60, depending on the amount, across the whole globe, using Niger Republican citizens to collect this money, iron money that was taken from us. We have a locus to retrieve that money. May God bless each and every one of us. These are the areas we should concentrate. Who is brutal, I swear. These are the people that did away with our money. That's what we should be looking for. Buhari remains the principal. I can't imagine for a period of 8 years, no money from petroleum where I work. Nobody could be able to speak how a dime after this proceed gone through Abakari. Nobody is talking about it. The former, what do they call it? The former GMD of NNPC, that is late now, who went contrary to the rules and regulations of our DC to do away with about $25 billion, which Osinbajo acknowledged when I was speaking there. Where is he? Even if we know we don't talk about that person, he have people who may be living with that money. These are the areas where we can get our money to kickstart the economy. Then again, the purported 30 billion that is in the treasury, of which that I said is in a domiciliary account. I have £100 there. Let them take my £100. Tinubu should do the dispo. Then another day we now begin to focus on Tinubu, how he came into the system. Government is like a wheel. It's like a cycle. Now he has come. Let's support him to see how we can retrieve this money. Thereafter, somebody who is coming, then can focus on that and see how we are going to, carry the ladder to his table to see how we're going to siphon all his money. That's
Thank
the way
you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate those contributions. I appreciate your time. Back to you, Elder. We are up on time, and those are the last hands that are up. If you could, I know a lot of it were comments. So if you want to respond to those last set of questions that we had, and then begin to close, and we'll see if Mr. President is back on.
Thank you.
If not, Pastor Sonny will close. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to have these comments. Permit me to start from the last speaker. When we started the meeting, I mentioned a phrase, neo-eugenics. By virtue of neo-eugenics, the Western world are not going to allow us at all to escape from the trap of capital flight by corruption. And it is high time we start enlightening ourselves, and we need to start getting families of deceased public officials or past public officials who have not been able to access the resource that their parents stashed away in those foreign. We need to do this in such a way and manner that will ensure that ultimately everybody is consciously aware that we are dealing with a very difficult situation. And we need to know beyond doubt that these characters that are occupying public office, as it were, are not necessarily people that have our interest at heart, because they are part and parcel of an elite class that operates kakistocracy. And if that is what they are operating, and they are part of an elite class instead that is interested in state capture, and they always achieve state capture, then we need to be careful to understand that state capture is not only real, state capture has negative consequences. And that these negative consequences are such that have a way of negatively impacting on us. And if they have a way of negatively impacting on us, the question now will be, how do we manage such going forward? Somebody had talked about the need for an ideological revolution. I want to agree with you, but we need to be mindful of the fact that the ideological revolution that we are talking about has come from an informed perspective. And informed perspective must be such that clear. And if it is clear to us on what we seek to achieve, then we will have an opportunity to make progress with it. One other area that I was hoping you would have gone into, which you started discussing when you talked about the issue of our elders. I was hoping that you would have gone to the level where we will have, as it were, in place African traditional restorative restitutional justice system incorporated in land cleansing, which will help us to address some of the pain of the bloodletting, the bloodshed that have occurred in some places. Until we do some of this restorative justice and retributive justice and the dynamics of those rituals. Some people will ask me, you say you are an elder. Yes, I am. There was an incident between a certain Cain and Abel in Genesis of the Bible. We got to hear about the blood of the one that was slain, speaking in Hebrews. And in Revelations, we got to hear that some saints that were killed were asking, when, Lord, are you going to avenge us? So there is need for us to go into that dimension. The subject of we trying to wrap up in terms of the promises and the counter shock of public life. I am happy that Jumoke did not come up on time to read a little brief on the guest speaker, which will allow me to escape unnecessary over-expectation. It would have allowed you to understand that I've been in Abuja since 1988. And I came in as part of the research to the presidency of the Nigerian state. And I've been around that corridor for quite a while. One of the reasons why I brought this out is this. If you're not very careful when you are coming into public office in Nigeria at the presidential level, and you do not come with people that will give you very strong alternate data support and policy restraining order, you are going to end up moving away from the promises you made. I'll give you a good example. You mentioned that the president promised on agriculture and agrarian, and this is not just a subject of what he said. It is contained in his manifesto, and the forward of his manifesto contains actually about 14 paragraphs. About 6 of the paragraphs have to do with agri and employment. And there is something that the opposition used extensively against him. You will remember 50 million youth and Agbado youth. Interestingly, I've had to do a deconstruct to understand the policy implications of that. What the president now, the incumbent president now, as a citizen was saying, is that within 100 days, because you can plant and harvest Agbado within 100 days, corn. And it is not only corn, you have millet, you have sorghum, you have a number of things. If only they are translated this into what is called integrated farm settle scheme, which would have mirrored the 17 sustainable development goals, we will by now be having a situation that we would have taken out of the unemployment market close to 4 million Nigerians, and you don't need to start saying you want to be giving them cash transfer. They are already involved in production within the cycle of maize, corn, sorghum, guinea corn. They can do all that, beans, soya beans. But unfortunately, who are the people surrounding the incumbent president today? They are so-called graduates of Harvard and H.W. institutions. When these Bretton and the so-called Ivy League graduates come around, they have an agenda that is dovetailed into new eugenics. They won't want your economy to work. They are the ones that allow the Tinubu to fly. Because if it had started flying the moment he got into office, by now we would have had the second round of harvest of whether it be corn, maize, sorghum, with all the improved seedlings that we have. I am hoping that one way or the other, it will have access to these alternate data that are coming from people like us and people with the sporadic protests that are taking place, and those who are pushing and his administration to arrest the market women in Mina and other places must begin to have a rethink. Because if we do not have a controlled system, we will have a demolition exercise that none of us will know. The elite must start thinking of self-preservation and appreciate the need to support the incumbent president and the administration to do the needful. A good example, we're now discussing what are the state governors doing, what are the local government chairmen doing in their various jurisdictions. We need to start deepening conversations around those areas. Security is cross-cutting. You cannot talk of health security without being familiar with the needs to appreciate that we are having a major crisis up front. We have nurses that are living in droves. Doctors have left in droves. In another couple of years, if we do not put measures in place, we are going to have a major challenge in the health service and healthcare provision sector. I hope that ultimately we have seen the folly of and stand and support one particular cluster of our population. that were seeking to embed their population across the country for political capital. We have seen what it can do to our farm production, our farm produce and our agrarian sector, and ipso facto, our food security. And that is why we are having the kind of crisis that we are having. If you do not understand that we have a major crisis, I'll let you into this. The incumbent president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has given an instruction to release grains from the silos. That instruction, that presidential directive, is already getting close to 1 month. There are no grains that have been pushed out because some of us suspect some of those grains are available on paper, but they are not available in the silos in reality. And you can now understand why they discovered some that were about to be carted out of the country in Zamfara state along the Alela borders. This is courtesy of the information shared by the incumbent Vice President Shetima. And this is under a dispensation when our borders are closed with those countries under the directive principles of collective responsibility of ECOWAS heads of states. Now, if that is happening, it means that the incumbent president must be consciously aware that a number of things are being done by people under him, and they are not being brought to sanction, and they are not being brought to book. So if trailers can be moving, and they said a particular number of trailers were found on the queue wanting to leave the country, it means that either some people are not doing their job in terms of border access control, and they may need to be sanctioned. I want to thank you for the privileged opportunity to be here, and I want to absolve the NLS of the fact that these are my own personal views, and I spoke by virtue of my informed experience and data available at my disposal. I want to thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time. That was quite a lot to cover, and we appreciate the insightful conversation. We'll probably be following up with you behind the scenes. Colonel Fadile, thank you so much for the introductions. We appreciate you. And I'll turn over to Pastor Sonny. And I also want to apologize for my sporadic internet. So it just goes to prove that it's issues all over the world. It's not unique to Nigeria. I had internet issues throughout today. So apologies for some of the disruption in terms of not reading your bio on time. So thank you, sir. Really appreciate your being here with us. Pastor Sonny, over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending today's program. We're still trying to get to the bottom of this security situation in Nigeria. It's a challenging talk, and just like Professor Grinch said, I think look it from all aspects, linked security to every other sector in Nigeria, because it's not something that the security agents alone can handle. The people carrying arms against the nation today is their own way of protests, because when we tried to do a peaceful protest, they sent the security agencies after us. So when there are no deterrents, more and more people join crime. And that's what personally I've noticed over the years. You know, when you don't bring them to book, a lot of people, and government needs to look at this thing holistically. So my ask is, those of you that are security experts, do not give up. I heard you say that you could solve the policing issue of Nigeria in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, if it is possible in 6 weeks, and we have been grappling with this thing for over 20 years, then there's a problem when there are people saying we can solve this thing. So I think it's a matter of will. It's a matter of will, and I agree with you. The president famously said in Kano that we'll employ 500,000 people into the police force. And if there's nothing to feed them, we'll give them agbado and corn and all those things. He's been president now going to almost a year. And they are still dilly-dallying while people are dying. And it's a very, very serious issue in this country. So, Elder Fagbemi, we really thank you for your very insightful and thoughtful contribution to this discourse. I do hope that those in the corridors of powers are listening and they are able to invite genuine people, and also they have a sincere heart to want to implement solution, because like you said, a lot of papers and documents on this. So no more meetings. It's time for action. I think our problem in Nigeria is that we don't act. We meet and meet and meet, produce document upon document, and then nobody takes any action on them. But we really appreciate your contribution. This video will be there, and as many people as want to see it can see it on YouTube. We appreciate everyone that has been part of the program today. Same time, every week, we have a national issue we are talking about and how to prefer solutions to the problem of Nigeria. So I really appreciate everyone that has taken time to be here on the platform today. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the week until we meet again next Thursday. Stay blessed.
Thank you. And I also put a link. We have a link in the chat room on how to, if you want to engage with ALG on some of the initiatives that we have ongoing. And let's talk about reorientation. We have the Citizens Responsibility campaign that we're working on as well, which is part of information, sharing information and making sure that the citizens are empowered with information. So please go ahead and fill that form. We would like to engage you and keep you posted on this weekly discussions. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening and God bless you. God bless Nigeria.